I'm Mark Seifter.
And I'm Linda Zayas Palmer.
And this is Arcane Mark. Hello, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome to the show. Today we're going to be talking about the darkness element in Pathfinder as well as in D&D 5e for the eldamon. So basically, the element works almost exactly the same in both games. The damage amounts are different. We're going to use the numbers from Pathfinder, but like generally the die sizes are one bigger in D&D, but then there's fewer dice. So that's just what. So if I say D8 and you have the D&D, it'll be it's D10s. Usually, it's not always exactly that because the math has been done to make it line up between the two. Now, darkness is one of the most popular elements conceptually, but because light and darkness are just complicated in just about any game that has light and darkness rules, the darkness element is listed as one of the high complexity elements in Battle Zoo Eldamon. And it's for good reason. You need to be able to shroud yourself in darkness, which basically makes it harder to see you than whatever the ambient light level that is around you. And that's a little bit complex. That's something that you and the GM are both going to have to work with. The way it works in Battle Zoo Eldamon is there is a shrouded condition. This condition have a value between 1 and 3, and however shrouded you are, that determines basically how much you dim the light level. So if you're shrouded 1, then you basically make the light just a little bit darker than it normally would be. So for example, if it was in bright light and you're shrouded 1, then it's like you're in dim light. So someone would want to use low light vision to be able to see you. If you were already in dim light, then it's like you're in darkness, so you need dark vision if people are going to be able to see you. And if you were already in darkness, then basically it can get shrouded down to a supernatural darkness, which makes you concealed even to creatures with dark vision unless they have greater dark vision. So the difference is for Shrouded 1 is that it can't ever completely put you in darkness. It's only a weak shroud. It goes up to only like gloomy shadows. But any amount of Shrouded beyond 1 can travel that number of steps. So Shrouded 2 is bright light directly to darkness. And anything else goes into magical darkness that dark vision is not enough to deal with. Shrouded 3 will actually just flat out take you to magical darkness that dark vision is not up to deal with, no matter what the light condition is. So the basic way to remember it is that Shrouded 1 kind of just puts you in the shadows. Shrouded 2 always puts you at least in full darkness, if not better, with the magic darkness. And Shrouded 3 is just all the way there, no matter what is going on around you. So you can see it's a little more complicated because it plays with the ambient light levels. And when I say you, I mean whatever creature was shrouded. You can also shroud an enemy. It makes them harder to hit if your team doesn't have a good way to see in darkness. But anyone who is shrouded, also their own vision is affected by the shroud. Now you might think, well, wait a minute. That means if I shroud myself to hide, I might not be able to see. Fortunately, the Darkness Eldamon have greater dark vision and can see in any kind of darkness no problem. And the Darkness Elemental Avatar, as we will see when we get to Elemental Senses, are going to be able to see through it as well if they take a feat, which is, I would say, highly recommended for the Darkness Element avatars.
And generally, when you talk about these higher complexity elements, they're also often the ones that have that factor of needing to work together with the tactics of your team to make sure that you are making the best use of it and that you're not like gonna have a situation where the other players don't have a way to deal with the darkness.
That's right. If you're the only one who can see in darkness and you're constantly shrouding the enemies in darkness, the rest of your team might not be pleased. That's part of why it's listed as high complexity. Now, there are ways to go about it where you don't shroud them. You could choose powers that shroud you. Well, let's take a look at what we've got on offer. So we've got, at first level, we're going to start with, as always, 2 attack powers. Active, they're called, but they're generally attacks. Some of them in darkness, you'll see, will make darkness actively. There's going to be one reaction, as always, and one refresh to get our powers back. So one of our active powers is called Tendrils of Shade. It shoots out a cone of shadow that is going to shroud you and deal damage to your foes. So it's going to deal D4s of damage in a 15-foot cone.
What type?
It's going to be cold because there is no darkness damage type. And so the cone is going to get bigger and bigger as you eventually level up. And if you were already shrouded, you could actually extend the cone by additional amounts. So it goes up to 25 feet at first level if you were shrouded even before you used this, all the way up to 45 at 17th level if you were shrouded and you're at the maximum level. So you can get quite a big cone with Tendrils of Shade. But if you're starting out, you often will want to use Tendrils of Shade to gain shrouded, and the reason why is your other first level power, Gloaming Backstab. So it sinks into the shadows and stabs your foe in the back with a blade of pure darkness. It deals D6s of cold damage, and it's a melee attack. You have to, get into reach. You stab them with the darkness. If you're shrouded and hidden or undetected by the foe, it also deals D4s of additional precision damage, which make it higher damage than even when we did the Guide to Death, and we're like, the highest base amount of any first level power, and honestly, all the way up to almost 9th or 11th level powers, is Death Touch, which does D10s of damage. Well, a D6 plus a D4 is 6 on average, and a D10 is 5.5. So if you actually get Glowing Backstab's combo, it does more than Death Touch does. And if you weren't already shrouded, you don't get the bonus damage, but you become shrouded. So you could use it to make a bigger cone on the next turn, but it's often, especially if there's one big, strong enemy, it can be better to shroud yourself first and then do the ridiculous backstab.
Could you make a character who was like a rogue, like a multi-class with a rogue or what have you, that was really doubling down on the whole sneak attack thing?
Oh yes, there's a lot of things that would be good for you in this element if you love sneak attacking, and if you love to sneak attack and you love to hide, this is going to help you out, and we're going to get even better as we level up. So when we go to our reaction power, we've got Retributive Shroud. When an adjacent foe hits you with a melee attack, or a foe hits you with a melee unarmed attack, you basically shroud them in darkness to try to make it harder for them to hit. And so, based on the reflex save, they become shrouded until the end of their current turn. Even on a success, they're shrouded 1, which will generally give them a 20% failure chance unless they have some kind of special vision. A lot of monsters do, so keep that in mind. But keep also in mind the fact that when you shroud an enemy and you're already in any kind of light conditions other than bright light, if you can shroud them at least 2, you're going to be able to give them a failure chance even if they have dark vision because of the way that works.
Until the end of their turn is convenient because it's going to mess up the rest of their attacks, but it is going to disappear in time to make sure that that's not the opponent that your allies didn't want to have shrouded.
Correct. Nothing that we've listed so far interferes with our allies because it shrouds ourself. The first 2 active powers shrouded ourself. This reactive power shrouds the enemy, but only during their own turn. Now, I suppose if you're really trying to interfere with your ally, you could do that, and then the enemy could be like, now I'm going to move away, and the fighter is going to try to hit me, and I'm shrouded, so they don't.
Okay, but at that point...
it's very unlikely.
And at that point, maybe you're messing up someone's reactive strike or whatever, but...
So, the first refresh power you start with is Embrace the Dark, where you basically refresh your powers, you become Shrouded 1, which is going to at least give you some, dim light, shadowy area to hide in, until the end of your next turn, which includes, that means you can do this and then start with a Glowing Backstab.
Oh, yeah, your second...
you then hide, and you then sneak, which makes it even easier to use your Glowing Backstab, because remember, you can't just be shrouded to get the extra damage on Glowing Backstab, you actually do have to be hidden to them. So you basically get your powers, get shrouded, hide, and then sneak off somewhere. You just kind of melt into the darkness, and nobody knows where you are, hopefully, if you're good at stealth. And so
you should probably be good at stealth if you're taking this.
I would recommend it, but you know what? You do you, right? You can definitely do you on that. So, let's see. In chat, Kojo has been talking about being a forever GM, and it can get cold in the dark. Yeah, darkness effects generally often have done cold damage in the past. Like, light effects often are like, this does fire. And in 5e, sometimes it's also radiant and necrotic as well for some of these effects. So, but in Pathfinder, those types of damages don't exist, and instead there are damages that are specifically based on life force, vitality, and death, void. So we use cold and fire.
Yeah, because those ones are very much tied to, like, it's the type that healing does.
Yes. Absolutely. So we've got our starting powers. We're set. We understand how this works. Now let's think about how we're going to upgrade at level 3. So we basically have two options here. And
looks like we have a damaging option and like a more techie option.
Correct. So Pall of Darkness is a very techie. It is powerful, but it means that you don't have at level 3 two damaging powers in your rotation. So Pall of Darkness is a 20-foot burst within 120 feet that it snuffs out light. Non-magical light sources don't emanate in there. Magical light can try to counteract you. Good luck. And it's just dark. It lasts until you refresh. So it's basically giving you darkness that you can throw up like any time that you want. But you're not dealing any damage. It still can be useful, though, because of the fact that it is essentially dark. So if the enemy doesn't have dark vision, then you're hidden for sure, even if you didn't have a high shrouded condition.
So that's always setting it to regular darkness, like a darkness type spell.
Yes, it's not using the shrouded condition. Yeah. But if you have this darkness and you're shrouded 1, then almost nothing in the game can.
I thought shrouded 1 couldn't increase the.
It cannot increase it from into full darkness.
Oh, but it can still increase it from full darkness into magical darkness?
I believe so. Let me see. Yes, the only thing it can't do is turn dim light into regular darkness. That is the only limitation on Shrouded 1.
Well, because that's a really big difference in terms of the number of creatures that have low light vision versus.
Well, it also is that low light vision, like in dim light, the worst that can happen is a 20% miss chance.
Yeah.
The difference between darkness and magical darkness, the worst that can happen is a 20% miss chance. You could say, well, what if they couldn't see? But then they couldn't have seen in the magical darkness at all. But the difference between dim light and darkness is just like you're invisible. So that's the only one that Shrouded 1 won't do for you. So it works very well with the Shrouded conditions. But on the other hand, it doesn't give the Shrouded condition, which means that if you keep it with Gloaming Backstab, it actually makes it quite easy to get your glowing backstabs on sort of later rotations, potentially. But it's a little bit trickier, and you might even have wanted to have it at 5th level Pall of Darkness, because then you can throw up a Pall of Darkness, you can then use some other power, and then do a glowing backstab on the 3rd turn. Your other option is Midnight Orb. This is your first one that shrouds the enemy. Do not take this if you are dealing with a team that just does not want the enemy to be shrouded. In general, as long as if you're in bright light and you don't critically hit the enemy, or even if you're in dim light, because it usually does shrouded 1. No, it doesn't last until you refresh. It's until the end of your next turn.
Ah, gotcha.
So generally, as long as your allies have low light vision in Pathfinder, which, in D&D that doesn't exist, there's only dark vision. But as long as they only have low light vision in Pathfinder, you're usually okay to use this because, okay, you shrouded an enemy in the dark and made it into even darker, but that would give them a mischance. But if they don't have dark vision, it actually doesn't matter unless you crit. Here's what it does. It's a ranged attack. It's within 60 feet. It does D4s. And if you're shrouded, you get a bonus on the attack, which makes it more accurate. Additionally, the range goes up as you level up until eventually it's 180 feet. Basically, you shroud them 2 on a crit, 1 on a hit, and you shroud them 1 without dealing damage on a failure, but not a critical failure.
But since this is a longer range, you might also consider using it to mess with a ranged opponent that your party wasn't necessarily considering fully engaging yet to damage them and also debuff them.
Yep. And if the enemy is actually messed up by your shrouded condition, then even on a failure, you're giving them a 20% miss chance, which is pretty nice.
Mm-hmm.
So both of these have their uses, and if you are in exactly the wrong party, the interesting thing about this is for an eldamon, where when you take it, you actually have to replace one of your original powers for good. You might not actually get a lot of use out of these right away if you have exactly the wrong party. You might need to stick with your starting ones. For an elemental avatar, you absolutely want to grab one of these. Even if you don't prepare it on most days, you can pull it out at 5th level, or you can pull it out when you have the right situation for it. For instance, you know you're not fighting a group, you don't want to use Tendrils of Shade, your group is okay with Midnight Orb. Honestly, if your group is okay with Midnight Orb, it's a good choice in a lot of ways. So let's move up to 5th level. This is where we're going to pick up 2 new powers, and not only that, but we could take a reactive power at this level if we want. The 2 active power choices are Cloak of Darkness, which is basically, it damages creatures in a 20-foot emanation as you shroud yourself in a billowing cloak of darkness. You become Shrouded 1, and the cloak deals d4s of cold damage to your enemies based on their fortitude save. If you were already shrouded, you can increase the emanation up to 30 feet if you want. You can make it bigger. Outstretched Shadow is the other option for you here. You stretch your own shadow into a line, chilling and enshrouding everything within. That also deals d4s of cold damage, all creatures in an 80-foot line, depending on their reflex save. If you're shrouded, you can extend it up to 120 feet. Creatures in the area who were already shrouded, possibly by Midnight Orb, take up -2 on their saving throw. So that means that this one combos well with Midnight Orb in the party where everyone's like, you're okay, shroud the enemies. And basically, on a failure, they're Shrouded 1 on their save. On a critical failure, they're Shrouded 2. And on a success, they don't get Shrouded, but they do take half damage.
And Cloak of Darkness then would be a good alternative to Tendrils of Shade for a Gloaming Backstab combo for a reliable way to get yourself Shrouded. And while the Emanation is going to deal damage to creatures that are near you, it's not necessarily going to give away your entire location easily.
That's right.
Since it's not, like, only adjacent.
But if you're wading into the enemies in melee for your gloaming backstab anyway, Cloak of Darkness can be great. It gives you the Shrouded, easy to use with gloaming backstab. Now, your alternative reaction is Sink into the Dark. The trigger is a creature succeeds at a perception check to seek you, and you would become observed by them. Basically, you're not going to be hidden anymore. They found you. So the requirement is you're shrouded and hidden or undetected to them. So just when they're about to observe you, you sink into the shadows and you attempt to hide with a +2. So it's like, oh, nope, try again. It didn't work. So as long as your hide succeeds, then they don't wind up seeing you anyway.
So since that one requires being shrouded, and then the other one, the other reactive power makes you shrouded.
Makes the enemy shrouded.
Makes the enemy shrouded, yeah. I think it's going to come down to, like, do you feel like you have enough sources of shrouded that you would want to take that to assist yourself with remaining hidden and protected? Or do you feel like you would rather shroud the enemy?
Also, if you're going for an enemy shrouding build, you might think you're not going to be shrouded, and then you can add Retributive Shroud for even more ways to shroud the enemy.
Exactly, for then the ones where they take more damage if they're shrouded.
That's right. So think about which 2 you're going to pick up here. One of them will be added to your rotation flat out. The other will replace something. So you'll have 3 active powers by the time you're at 5th level, and that can allow you to combine these a little bit more interesting way.
So do you think it generally makes sense to have, like, a cluster that focuses on, like, shrouding yourself versus shrouding the enemy, and then, like, maybe only at later levels do you try to branch out to do both?
Yes. It is a good combination to do that. On the other hand, you might want to be able to do both, depending on what your party needs and what your combinations are. It's good because they often play off each other. If you're already shrouded, that something happens versus it. But even Outstretched Shadow, if the enemies are shrouded, they take a penalty on their save. But if you're shrouded, you have a longer line. So there are ways to mix and match and So, like, if you wanted to shroud yourself, you could do a very long line against the enemies, 120
So you may want to have, like, a primary one that you focus on and then some in the secondary one that'll work well together.
And also think about
give
single target versus
yes.
area. So the full area build at level 5 is Tendrils of Shade plus Cloak of Darkness plus Outstretched Shadow, the area damage build. That gives you 3 area attacks, which are a combination of reflex and fortitude saves as well. Another thing you can do is take Cloak of Darkness for the fortitude, Outstretched Shadow or Tendrils of Shade for the reflex, and then Glow Me Backstab or Midnight Orb for an attack roll so that you can go against different defenses. And in D&D, these are dexterity and constitution saves. So at 7th level...
How do the darkness levels work in D&D then, since there's not a low light vision?
There are sort of things where you can have dim light, but there's not, like, low light vision. So the darkness levels in D&D are a little bit simplified. So if you understand the ones in Pathfinder, the ones in D&D are even easier to handle. So at 7th level, you can pick Fade into Darkness, which is no damage, but it's very good for certain builds, especially including that rogue one that we were talking about. You fade completely into the darkness. You become Shrouded 3 until you refresh or some other effect ends your Shrouded condition. Period.
End of story.
And that means no matter what, if the enemies do not have greater dark vision, you're concealed to them.
You're just like this. There's just this blob
hide.
of darkness that's moving around.
You can hide and like fade away because of this shroud of darkness that is moving around. So it does say that your general position might be obvious because you're this.
Yes, there's an obvious orb of pure shadow that's wandering around.
Obvious orb of pure shadow. So it might make it harder to sneak, but you can still hide in it, and people might not be able to see you.
Gee, I wonder where the rogue went.
Also, if the enemies don't have dark vision, they know where you are, but they definitely have a 50% miss chance every time they do anything to you if you fade into darkness. Obviously, since this lasts until you refresh, every single other power that is stronger when you are shrouded will be stronger when you put up a fade into darkness. The other choice is Shadow Betrayal. You take control of another creature's shadow within 60 feet, causing it to betray that person or creature and attack and hinder them. When you use it, and at the beginning of each turn, it makes an attack roll using your power modifier to deal a little bit, half as many d6s as we usually do of cold damage until you refresh, until they escape from their shadow by like using the escape action, or if the shadow critically fails an attack roll.
Are there, does it require any sort of light conditions to have a shadow that's cast?
So, basically, when the creature is shrouded, the shadow gains a circumstance bonus to damage rolls equal to their shrouded value because there's, like, deeper shadows against them. That does not necessarily require any particular
Are vampires immune?
Well, it does say you take control of their shadows, so if they don't have a shadow, then if they're a creature that can't cast shadows, then they're in good shape.
Like incorporeal creature or whatever.
They're in good shape if they can't do it. So if you critically succeed, they're also immobilized for the turn because the shadow like grabs them and holds them in place. Whereas if it succeeds, they take a penalty to their speeds as it kind of slows them down, tugging against them. Even on a failure, it doesn't deal damage, but gives them a penalty to their speeds.
So I would say that if they were literally a shadow, even though that's incorporeal, that they shouldn't be immune.
You're gonna have to be the one who decides that. And so for the refresh power, if you don't like Embrace the Dark, where you're gonna refresh, become shrouded, hide, and then sneak. And honestly, Embrace the Dark goes well with Fade into Darkness, because the one round where you wouldn't have had shrouded from Fade into Darkness is right after you refresh and
then you hide and sneak, and then
but if you want to replace it, especially since you wouldn't be getting Fade into Darkness if you take the new fresh power, you can get Umbral Call. You call forth darkness, you use it to refresh your darkness powers. You refresh, and then as soon as you refresh, the area in a 20-foot emanation around you becomes darkness until the end of your next turn. Light doesn't enter it. Non-magical light sources don't emanate, even if the light radius would extend beyond the area. Magical light can attempt to counteract it. Light can't pass through. Creatures in the area can't see outside without dark vision. So basically, it creates a temporary darkness for you while you're refreshing, and you come out of that cocoon of darkness with all of your powers back. So that's level 7. Lots of options. They're really branching out here because Shadow Betrayal is some nice damage over time that can also potentially mess with the enemy's movement. Fade into Darkness is great if you need to be shrouded, and the new Refresh, if you're not sneaking around all the time, can be nice because it makes everything dark. At 9th level, we're going to have another choice between 2 active powers. We do not add any reactive or refresh powers this time. Eclipsing Embrace surrounds you with a layer of eclipsing darkness, which latches onto and enshrouds anyone who attacks you, chilling them to the bone. Until you refresh, adjacent foes that hit you with a melee attack, as well as anybody who touches you or hits you with an unarmed attack, takes cold damage and becomes shrouded 1. If you're shrouded, the cold damage increases. So basically, they get shrouded as some of the shadows like cling off on them and attack them each time they attack you. It works well with the abilities that are strong against enemies that are shrouded, especially if you think they're going to keep attacking you, because then they're just going to be giving themselves these negative conditions.
I'm noticing that there are a lot of things here that work well at close range.
It definitely can turn you into like a mischance dodge tank if you want to try to do that. You won't have a lot of hit points as an eldamon, and even an elemental avatar is not great on their hit points, but you can still give it a shot. When it comes to a mischance, they can protect you even from crits. Your other choice at level 9 is Vanishing Silhouette. You send for the silhouette of darkness that resembles your own shadow while shrouding yourself, immediately hiding as the silhouette distracts your target. It does D6s of cold damage to a creature within 120 feet.
So this is a longer range.
You become shrouded 1 until the end of your next turn, and then you hide. So if they don't see you, they're like, wait, what? They just charged me. Wait, no, that was a fake. Where did the original go? Because they were watching the one that charged them from 120 feet away. And basically, it's going to deal damage, at least some damage, even if you fail, unless you critically fail on the attack. And even if you critically fail, you still
get to hide.
You can hide. Alright, so obviously Eclipsing Embrace is going to be a sort of a techie one for if you're going into the front and letting the enemies attack you. Vanishing Silhouette is a good one for the sort of shroud myself, keep in the distance, who knows what's going on attack build. So moving on to level 11, this is where we're going to pull out our last reactive power and 2 other attack powers. So pick your favorite of these when you get to level 11 based on your build. Gloom Burst is an outpouring of gloom that's in a 20-foot burst within 120 feet. All foes take d6s of cold damage, and allies take no damage and get shrouded 1. Now, is that good for them? If they're ready for it, by level 11, I hope they are, then it is, because the enemies might have a chance to miss them. If they're not ready for it, they might not like it, but at least they didn't take any damage.
And 20-foot burst can be avoidable depending upon the room size for ranged people.
Look, at least they didn't take any damage. If you were already shrouded when you used Gloom Burst, by the way, you could choose to spread the gloom in a 40-foot...
But also, if they haven't figured it... Like
in a 40-foot emanation around yourself instead of a 20-foot burst. A 40-foot emanation is way bigger than a 20-foot burst, and 120-foot range is a lot more range than an emanation. So you could decide which of these is better. Obviously, not damaging your allies is a nice add with a 40-foot emanation. And enemies also get shrouded by this. On a failure, shrouded 1. On a critical failure, shrouded 2. So our other option for an active power is Umbral Curtain.
I'm seeing we've got a 3 action here.
It is a 3 action. It is a curtain. It is 5 feet thick, 10 feet high, 60 feet long in a straight line. Within 120 feet, it is dark, it blocks light, only creatures with dark vision can even see the other side, and you take damage if you pass through and become shrouded when you pass through the Umbral Curtain. So basically, it can block off those non-dark vision opponents from even being able to see you on the other side, and if they dare to try to cross, then they're going to get messed up by it. It's a battlefield control effect. So your last option is the final reactive power. So we had the one that shrouds your enemy. We had the one that if you're already shrouded, you hide again when they try to find you. The one we were missing is defensive shroud. A foe hits you with an attack, boom, you become shrouded 3 until the beginning of your next turn.
So that's not going to prevent that attack, but it is going to protect you against whatever else is going on. When you start next to the enemy and they start unloading a powerful barrage, they can either choose to presumably have to deal with not being able to perceive you, or waste their time moving to another turn.
Also, it lasts until the beginning of your next turn, so you can't use it for your other powers, but it does mean that other enemies are also going to have an issue with you. And with Shrouded 3, that's giving at least a 20% miss chance unless they're one of the few monsters that has greater dark vision. Possibly better, depending on what the situation is with Defensive Shroud. So, at level 13, this is where we're going to pick up our last possible refresh power, as well as 2 new powerful active choices. Darkness from Below creates a pillar that comes kind of from below. It's sort of the opposite of Flame Strength. So it is a vertical cylinder with your choice of radius from 5 to 15 feet and your choice of height from 40 to 200 feet. The bottom center must be within 200 feet of you. The top or far side of the pillar can extend out of range. It deals d6 of cold damage, and you become Shrouded 1 until the end of your next turn as the darkness creeps over you as well. And the foes who fail become Shrouded 2 or Shrouded 3 on a critical failure. This is very bad for foes who don't have dark vision because it guarantees that they become blinded no matter what the situation is around them.
And I'm noticing too that the size is very custom and the placement is very customizable so that you can aim it exactly to hit as many enemies as you can fit without hitting any of your allies.
Now, Nyctophobia we really want to pay attention to because it's only one foe within 120 feet. And it doesn't do that much damage because it's persistent damage. But it is a will save or wisdom save in D&D. And they become frightened and shrouded and take persistent cold damage equal to your level. Creatures with greater dark vision do get a +2 circumstance bonus on their saving throw. But creatures without darkness or dark vision or low light vision take a penalty. It's basically fear of the dark. You overwhelm them with fear of the unknown. Even on a success, they take half the persistent cold damage, are frightened 1 and shrouded 1 until the end of your next turn. On a failure, they are frightened 2, shrouded 2 until the end of your next turn. Then shrouded 1 until the persistent cold damage ends, which is going to give them that miss chance. If you refresh early before the persistent damage ends, then it does end the shrouded condition. And on a critical failure, they take double the damage. They're frightened 3. They're shrouded 3 until the end of your next turn, and then shrouded 1 until the persistent damage ends, just like before. So basically, you can deal damage over time. You're going to give them a debuff. You're going to make it hard for them to see. It's a nasty debuff. It's not that damaging, but it's still pretty good power against a single foe. Your last option here is the refresh power, Become the Shadow. You become one with the darkness and shadows, rearranging them to refresh your darkness powers. You refresh your powers, then become Shrouded 3 until the end of your next turn. So that's unlike Embrace the Dark, the one you started with. It doesn't let you hide and sneak,
but it makes you
really shrouded. So you can see how the situation, depending on what it is, Shrouded 3 can be way better if you're all the way in bright light and you just want to be hard to see, hard to hit. Alright, so moving on to level 15, we pick up 2 potentially very powerful active powers. Dark Cocoon is another one of these choose one foe and they're not going to be happy powers. So within 60 feet, choose a foe. It'd take a -2 on their reflex save if they were already shrouded as a cocoon of darkness comes around them. They break free, it sloughs off into inky darkness like a liquid. Otherwise, it can last up to a minute. Even if you refresh, it can still stay around. On a success, they're just kind of clumps of darkness that are holding them down, but they're still immobilized and shrouded 1 until they escape. Or they can succeed at a DC 10 athletics check to just pull it off clump by clump, which is usually way easier than escaping against your power DC. So the main thing on the success is that if they have any athletics at all, they can get rid of it easily.
Yeah.
On a failure, they are imprisoned completely within the cocoon. They are immobilized and shrouded 2 until they escape against your power DC, which can be very hard. On a critical failure, it is even holding them down. The only thing they can try to do in general, other than mental stuff, is escaping because they are restrained by the cocoon and shrouded 3 until they escape against your power DC. The other choice, if you're fighting multiple enemies very strong, is Phantom Raid. It's basically an AoE version of Glowing Backstab that is slightly less damaging than Glowing Backstab, but When I say AoE, I mean multi-target, since it makes attack rolls against everything. Basically, you split off countless shadow duplicates of yourself, and they attack everything within 120 feet that is a foe. It only does d4s of damage, but just like Glowing Backstab, if you are shrouded, it adds d4s of precision, which puts it at a slightly better than d8, slightly worse than d10 situation on every single opponent. And even if it misses, it does half cold damage. It doesn't do the precision damage on a miss, even if you have the precision
But it's a
damage.
huge radius, and it's only enemies.
Yes.
So it's very targeted in that way. Whereas Dark Cocoon, it doesn't deal damage, but it's very... Well, first of all, if you're thinking about what has good reflex saves, a lot of those big enemies do not have great reflex saves. And also are the types that would otherwise potentially be hard to get with things that stick creatures down.
Absolutely. So let's look at our strongest regular active powers before we get to the ultimate powers. So at 17th level, Heart of Darkness is a pulsing Heart of Darkness, which pulses and explodes in a massive burst. Within 500 feet, a 30-foot burst, d6s of damage, and it's a fortitude save. As long as any foes take damage, your heart surges with the power of darkness, and you become Shrouded One, and get a bonus on saving throws and skill checks until the end of your next turn. And even creatures who succeed on their save are Shrouded One. Failures.
And take half damage. So
Yes,
that
and
means
take
that
half
as long
damage.
as anyone
As long
doesn't...
as anyone doesn't critically succeed
as long
or
as-
be
yeah.
immune to cold.
As long as everyone doesn't critically succeed or be immune to cold,
Yes.
then yeah.
On a failure, they're Shrouded 2, and on a critical failure, they're Shrouded 3, and take double damage. So, Shadow Storm is your other choice. That's a 3 action. It calls forth a storm of dancing shadows in a 20-foot radius burst within 120 feet. Foes that enter or start their turn in there take d6 of cold damage, half as much as usual, but it's every turn. Mm-hmm. And the area is obscured in dim light if it would otherwise have been in bright light. So basically, it always moves into dim light. When in the area, you and your allies don't take the damage from Shadow Storm. Unlike normal dim light, it combines with the Shrouded One condition to shroud the creature in darkness, making it hidden, except to creatures with dark vision, etc. Mm-hmm. The storm lasts until you refresh, and a creature only takes cold damage once during its turn, even if it constantly moves out and in multiple
All
times.
those types of abilities that are like a wall or an area or things like that are set up to make sure it's like, okay, yeah, you can't do a thing where you take damage just by zigzagging through it over and over again.
That's right. Mm-hmm. So let's take a look at our ultimate power choices here. We have
power.
Rahu Ketu. We call upon 2 mythical lunar nodes who work together to create eclipses, bringing forth an eclipse that ends the light. It just ends it. All light ceases to shine within a 200-foot emanation for 1 minute. Even the sun is eclipsed over that range. Though the sun shines normally across the rest of the planet. Thank you, Ironheart Surge from 3.5 D&D that causes us to have to specify that it does not actually destroy the sun. Foes within the eclipsed area must attempt a will save, again, another will save, with the following effects. Creatures with greater dark vision get a bonus again. Critical success, nothing happens. On a success, they are barely shaken by the dying of the light and become frightened 1. On a failure, they are deeply unsettled and become frightened 2. And on a critical failure, they're truly terrified and become frightened 3. So it's a 200-foot emanation of basically fear, the first level spell, except for it also destroys all light.
Yes.
Including the sun in that area. It's just gone. So that's pretty cool. The other choice is Tezcatlipoca. Calls forth a mythical jaguar of obsidian darkness, slashing through all foes with hundreds of obsidian claws and leeching away their light. Creatures that you choose within 200 feet take d8s of cold damage with a basic fortitude save. Those that fail are Shrouded One until the end of your next turn. So it's a huge area, it's d8s, and it's going to shroud them if they fail. So, what about those other abilities that are gained by an elemental avatar? Your locomotion is basically easy to sneak around. You can hide and sneak even without cover or being concealed. The unnatural darkness and shadows that hide you might give you away, so you take penalty. If you have the legendary sneak skill feat, you don't take the penalty, instead get a bonus. The upgraded locomotion lets you transport from shadow to shadow. If you're in an area of dim light or darkness, the shrouded condition is not sufficient. It has to actually be dim light or darkness. As a single action, you can teleport and reappear in another dim light or darkness within 30 feet. You still need line of effect, but you don't need to cross any of the intervening squares, allowing you to avoid obstacles and hazardous terrain. The movement doesn't trigger reactions, because you're just like, whoop.
And if you created an area of darkness on the battlefield with one of the abilities that creates an area of darkness, you can use that.
That's right. Elemental manipulation allows you to control darkness and shadows to change their configuration, or possibly give yourself or somebody shrouded 1. Elemental resistance gives you resistance to all damage from darkness and shadow effects and bonus on saving throw against them. Elemental sculptor lets you move and control darkness and shadows to a greater extent. You can twist and shape shadows like shadow puppets. You can adjust their position or appearance, 10 by 10 area within 20 feet. Just generally stuff like that. Elemental senses, as mentioned before, give you greater dark vision. Elemental shield, while your elemental shield is raised, the flat check to target you if you're concealed, such as from shrouded or any of this stuff, increases from 5 to 6, which actually changes it from a 20% mischance to a 25% mischance.
And you're going to be concealed a lot with a darkness person.
Yes. It might seem like a little, but it adds up, especially since your AC also went up from the elemental shield. Elemental surge, you or the chosen willing creature becomes shrouded 1 until the end of your next turn, and those are the powers. So you're like, okay, this is an interesting toolkit. You can shroud things, you can shroud yourself, but what do the eldamon do, and which kind of powers do they like the best? So the darkness eldamon come in more varieties than most because of the fact that darkness won a poll causing darkness and light to get the 2 extra eldamon families in the book. So the common darkness eldamon is the little shadow possum named Shadapi, and Shadapi, Shadow Possum, and Shadelphus. So basically, the deal with Shadapi is it's got like a little skeleton on its head, and it wants to actualize a fascination with bones by completing a collection or reaching a deep understanding of bones, based off of a myth of like a possum that wanted to like make things dark.
So that's why this is like a darkness instead of a death, despite the aesthetic.
Yes, it has bones that it's wearing, but is a darkness type. And so, basically, the elemental ability is when you're shrouded in darkness, your darkness powers deal extra damage. Are you shrouded? Deal extra damage. So, guess what build this is good for? The
Shrouding yourself build, yes.
Correct. The form ability of Bone Mantle gives you resistance to critical hits. And your evolution ability, Shadow Flight, when you evolve into Shadelphus, the bottom of your body trails away into shadows, allowing you to soar. You gain a flying speed, and you get a bonus on acrobatic checks made to escape, since your body is made out of shadow. So, what about Dusk Coyote, the Dusk Coyote eldamon? It can turn into its battle form of Dusk Coyote, and its evolved form is Dark Coyote. So Dusk Coyote is an interesting one. Their evolution condition, they want to understand the depths and boundaries of their dangerous obsession with fire. Even though fire is not necessarily the best option for a darkness eldamon to hang around, they just really like it, like a moth to a flame. So their elemental ability, Shrouded Graces, when they're shrouded, they can move faster. Their speed is increased by 10 feet, and they can move at full speed when they're sneaking. So they want things that let them hide and sneak around the battlefield, also while shrouding themselves.
They also want to be shrouded.
Their form ability of Shadow Dance gives them a different kind of plus 10-foot bonus to their speeds when they start in an area of dim light or darkness. So they like the powers that create darkness that is different than being shrouded.
So they like both then.
While in shadows or dim light, they ignore difficult terrain. So if they can be in the dark while also being shrouded, they get 20 total feet of movement and ignore difficult terrain and sneak at full speed. So whereas like Bob the Rogue might be sneaking at quarter speed through difficult terrain while it's in the dark, Dusk Coyote is like, great, I'm going to get full speed with plus 20. I'm going 45, you're going like... I don't even know. Are you going? You're going like 5 feet per action.
Yep.
So your evolution ability when you evolve into Dark Coyote is Mane of Shadow, which is going to give you a extra protection in dim light. You get a +1 circumstance bonus to AC in dim light, which increases to +3 if you're attacked while you're using a move action to move in dim light. So basically, you can wander around in the dim light, causing enemies to use up their reactive strengths or attacks of opportunity against you, and it's not going to be easy for them to hit you because of your extra AC, and your allies will then be able to take advantage of that. So it's a kind of a very mobile, but also loving to shroud itself choice. Now, what about someone who just kind of wants to not move around and just find a nice little nook and stick in there? That's Lepus Mini, the Gloom Silverfish eldamon. Lepus Mini's battle form is Lepus Merc, and its evolved form is Zygento Mercia, which is the second to last one in the Elder Wrap. So, its evolution condition is to truly understand and come to terms with their love of enclosed spaces enough that they can be willing to accept the wider world around them. Their elemental ability, Hidden Shadow, is when they are shrouded in darkness, they can hide and sneak more easily, crawling into every nook and cranny, giving them a bonus on stealth checks to hide and sneak from the shrouded condition. So, the shrouded condition already gives you a bonus, but this increases it to be even higher. Their form ability basically causes you to be covered in spikes, and when the enemy attacks you, they might take piercing damage. And their evolution ability, Mantle of Darkness, transforms their little ruff into a mantle of swirling shadows that settle around them when they aren't moving, such as when they're hiding still in a narrow space. And they can hide, though not sneak, without cover or concealment. If they don't act for a full round, or about 6 seconds outside of combat, they automatically become concealed by that. So we had a member chat from Math Guy Dave that said, "I'm here." Raise over
$1,000 in extra life gain? That's awesome.
Cool. Now we're moving on to a rare.
Congratulations.
Those last two, both Dusk Cuddle and Lepus Mini, were uncommon. We're moving on to our first rare. There are actually two rare Shadow families.
What were you playing?
The Kegeko is the rare Shade Gecko Eldamon. Kegeko becomes Gekrapustle as a battle form and Gekonsu as the evolved form. Gecko is an Eldamon that always wants to have contingency plans for any kind of situation, and basically they need to learn how to make truly comprehensive contingency, but realize that sometimes the time comes to let it drop and not worry about always having some kind of insurance for every possible situation.
Wait, is that why?
What?
Is that what?
Is what why? Is that why it evolves?
No,
so the
no,
elemental...
I mean, like, but you said insurance.
Yeah,
like, was this inspired?
Because you want to have insurance.
Oh my god.
So the elemental ability Contingent Shroud is a contingency plan. Contingency, do you like that better than to have an insurance? You're ready for anything with a shroud to protect you from harm. When you roll initiative, you become Shrouded 1 until the end of your first turn in combat. This also applies if you phase into combat on the first round. This can potentially allow you to use Gloaming Backstab right away, because you just start off by being shrouded. With your form ability, Gecko Tongue, your tongue is especially long with a reach of 10 feet, which you can use to make limited manipulate actions for a distance that don't require fingers or significant manual dexterity, such as opening a door or grappling a creature. And your evolution ability, when you turn to Gekonsu and get even more legs, is 6-fold spiked legs, which gives a third pair of legs covered in spikes. Your speed increases when you move through a foe's space, which is usually because you're really big or you tumble through their space. They take piercing damage automatically. They cannot avoid the piercing damage other than by having you not move through it. It says that you cannot just keep moving across the person's space in the same round to deal additional damage as well. And your tongue's reach increases to 20 feet if you are a Gekonsu. You are bigger, you are large, you have a very big tongue. So the last rare Eldamon for darkness is Manite, the Darkness Hand Eldamon, the Merc Hand. Its battle form is Manute, and Manix
totally not a master hand slash...
It's not a master hand, it's Manite. Need a hand? Manite is here to help.
Descend from the ceiling.
It doesn't descend from the ceiling. Its evolution condition is helping Manite keep trying over and over again until they finally do things perfectly and reach the consummation of their perseverance. They're obsessive about repeating the same activity over and over until they make no mistakes. And so it's hard to get them to focus on the desired task rather than whatever caught their attention first. Their elemental ability is Invisible Hand. When they're hidden or undetected due to darkness powers, their darkness powers are more powerful. And they basically whether it's from the shrouded condition, whether it's from an area of dim light or darkness, they deal additional damage. It's actually more damage than the extra damage that is dealt by Shadow Possum because they actually have to be, like, hidden.
Not just shrouded yet.
Whereas Shadapi, as long as they're shrouded, even the enemy can see you. It's like, I see that you're shrouded, Shadapi. And Shadapi's like, I don't care. I still did damage. So it does quite a bit more damage. It doesn't apply if you're only hidden or undetected for another reason, such as the invisibility
spell. No, you actually have to be using the darkness. Yeah.
Correct. The form ability Shadow Eruption is that the top of their body erupts with cold, lightless flames of darkness energy when using darkness powers. And basically for a round, a creature that hits you is going to take the cold damage from that. And then the evolution ability Handy Eyes, because the evolved form is covered in eyes, is going to make your dark magic imbued eyes reveal other hidden creatures, helping you ambush them, giving you constant effects of See the Unseen. So that is Manite, the Mercant Eldamon. It very much wants to make sure that it can hide.
Yes.
And it
can hide and you can't.
That is why it...
Or if you're the enemy.
Yes, that is definitely correct. And so that is why it is very careful about gaining abilities that will give it very high amounts of Shroud. Instead of getting like a little bit of Shroud to go a long way, with some of these guys that's just like, oh, if I'm shrouded at all, I can pick up my benefit with some of these other ones. Whereas Manite is like, no, I want to be really shrouded. I want to make sure it's really dark. And once that has happened, I'm going to do a bunch of bonus damage.
But as a rare, it's presumably not going to be your first one, so you'll have had a chance to get some of those deeper shrouding powers first.
That's right. So those are the Eldamon. They each go for a different build. Obviously, all of them care about the shrouded condition to some extent. Whether that is Kageko, which is really good on the first turn because of being able to start as shrouded, whether it's the ones that get a bonus when they're shrouded, or Manite, where if you're a perfectionist and you can both shroud and stay unseen to the enemies, you're going to get a ton of damage. All of these are options. Pick the one that best suits your personality or the one that you actually found in your game. So, as you can see, it's kind of complicated compared to the other elements we've done here because it's dealing with light and darkness. But it's definitely approachable. It synergizes with itself. You try to shroud yourself. Make sure you can see through that. You shroud your enemies sometimes. If your party's okay with it, you may have noticed fewer powers shroud your enemies because of the fact that, especially until higher levels, where
and
more
also
of them
looking
do.
at the Eldamon themselves, they weren't really based on like only attacking shrouded enemies.
Yeah, because also the low-level powers don't mostly shroud your enemy in case your party isn't prepared for it yet. And so that Eldamon would just be sad until you got to higher levels at that point. Like, neither of the level 1 powers does. There's only one option that can do it at 3rd level, for example. So, but once you get to 5th level and beyond, you can definitely go into shrouding the enemies. And if your party can see through the shroud, it's obviously more efficient to shroud the enemy so that it can't see everybody in your party rather than shroud yourself, which only protects you. Think about that. Think about your party composition, and you can master the darkness within you in order to defeat your foes and protect your allies with mischances. So, that is the darkness element, everyone. Thanks for watching. Please like or subscribe if you like these Eldamon guides or the guides we're doing here in general. And if you haven't voted yet for next Saturday's episode, please do so.
We have a vote already for
we have one vote for Arcane Mark Plays, but we may not have any other votes. So let us know in the chat which one you would like to vote for, and in the meantime, I will hand out some XP. So we're going to give out some experience points to everybody who is watching. There we go.
I just saw more votes coming in.
We've got 2 votes for 5, which is another Eldamon element. There we go.
That's gonna take it, I think.
And Rico says, I can't believe that air and water are still not picked. Didn't we already do water? I felt like maybe we did. But we definitely didn't do air. Maybe we didn't do water. I don't know.
I know we did ice for sure.
I've played, like, literally in games, water air and fire avatar a significant amount of time. So it's funny that if we haven't done water, that one of the two ones
Kojo
I've played
changed the
haven't
vote.
been done. Kojo changed the
Yeah,
vote.
it's still in the poll, so
There we go.
there we go.
Kojo's vote change didn't matter because Kojo was either outvoted or joined the crowd that all voted the same thing.
Yeah, but it's the principle of the thing. Anyway,
all right, so
here we go.
next week we will be doing another eldamon element on Saturday. Join us then, and also come to tiny.cc/Arcane Mark, our Discord, so you can vote for which element that will be and stop Rico from getting the element he wants, or help him get the element he wants.
Yeah, be nice to Rico.
It just depends on
Well,
what
I mean,
you want to do.
vote for what you want.
Yeah,
and
vote for what you want.
Just don't
It could be
sabotage
either of
Rico
those
on
two
purpose.
things.
That's me.
I mean, maybe that's what they want to do. You never know. All right, take care, everyone, and we will see you next.